it's a constant iteration. I think entrepreneurship is the biggest catalyst for growth in the rest of your life. Like what you do in your business is going to reflect on every other aspect of your life, your relationships, your health, the way you stand on a stage, the way you walk in a room. Like it all goes back to the way that you're running your business. So I kind of freaking love that. I love that daily challenge of like, what is the future I'm shaping for myself because I'm self-employed?
Welcome to Long Run Labs, a weekly podcast from the team behind For the Long Run, telling the stories of those running the outdoor industry where endurance and entrepreneurship meet. And welcome back. We have Angie Lake joining on Long Run Labs today. Angie and I have done a podcast on For the Long Run in the past, and she's one of the amazing contractors that keeps the For the Long Run and Long Run Labs media empire afloat. So Angie, welcome back.
I don't know if you'll ever get rid of me at this point.
I don't think so, and I wouldn't want to. And as you know, the first question is a tough one. And that question is, who is Angie?
Listen to episode 307 of For the Long Run to find out. I'm just kidding. I think what's interesting is seeing, now that it's been 2 years since we recorded that episode, like, who is Angie differently than she was 2 years ago? And one thing that comes to mind is at the end of that episode, I announced to the world for the first time that I would be attempting a 100-mile race the next year. And so now, who is Angie but a 100-mile finisher? I'm a women's race director, outdoor podcast host, menstrual health educator, and a storytelling consultant for outdoorsy brands and women. Keep it concise this time.
I love it. Wow, I can't believe that was 2 years ago. Okay, so you ran the 100-miler. Why did you do that?
Yeah, it was a decision to see what it would be like to actually really push myself beyond what I knew I could do. Because I was getting to the point with 50Ks, for example, where I'm like, well, I've done that a handful of times. I know I can, barring any type of, illness or injury. So what is far enough that I am not actually sure that I can finish? And for me, that was the 100. And honestly, physically, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Mentally, it was exactly the type of challenge that I was looking for. Really, the recovery was the worst part over that whole thing. I got those swollen elephant shins, not even my calves. My shins had this lymph swelling. So it was tough going for the few weeks in the recovery. But other than that, I got what I was looking for of pushing my limits.
I love the pursuit of I want to do something that I don't know that I can do. I was dealing with a lack of motivation last year, and my coach, David, was like, you should do something that scares you, and that's going to, whip you into finding motivation. And he was right about that. And I think there's a lot of power in doing that. And I'm at the same time thinking about how much I like doing 50Ks. And for me, 50K is still far. And the concept of a runnable 50K is intimidating. So I keep signing up for them because I know I can do a hikey 50K, but it's the concept of you got to run this whole damn thing is intimidating for me, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, it's honestly short races scare me to death now. I don't know the last time I signed up for a 5K or 10K. I mean, not maybe high school, right? And the idea of moving that fast for 6 miles sounds way harder than running a 50K at this point. So, maybe that's a sign that I need to sign up for some shorter races and get some speed back.
Well, the fun thing with the shorter stuff is you can do it and then you can just do it again the next week. I spent all that time training for the mile, and I raced it twice in a week because I missed it the first time and came too damn close the second time. But you can't take 2 swings at a 100-mile race in a 6-day period.
Right. The stakes feel higher in many ways. And I think that's why I like it so much.
Yeah, I think there's something to the pick a goal that scares you for different reasons, in addition to the concept of I also think doing races that I can, still eat lunch or a late lunch is enjoyable versus I don't like running at night. And maybe that's something I should do. And I should pick a goal that's a little scarier than 31 miles through the Marin Headlands. I don't know. So you've done a lot of racing and running yourself, and now you're in a position where you can help other people have the first experience or an incredible experience of their own. What did the evolution look like in Angie the race director and race owner. Why did that become something that you were interested in pursuing?
It was one of those things where I just didn't plan it. And then sometimes the best opportunities just come to you through your network and the people you know. So for context, I live in the Columbia River Gorge. It is not a running hub in the way that Boulder is. For most people who live here on the border of Oregon and Washington in the Cascade Mountains, running is a tertiary sport, right? They want to do their kayaking, they want to do their windsurfing, and running is a way to stay in shape for the other activities. So I really was not connected with a running community here at all. I could go an hour west of Portland and find plenty, right? And a lot of road runners, but I don't know, I'm a rural girl at this point. I'm not going out to the city. So, I had some friends who have done a lot of really cool races themselves. We also have a hub of really amazing people out here, like Alex King, who's the founder of Terragnota, lives in Trout Lake where our race happens. Sarah Oliben has been running all these races. She's up in Trout Lake where this race happens. So I just started to get a little bit more involved with the local runners in my community. And I met Stephanie Irving, who is the co-founder of Wild Woman Trail Runs. She's also the 2026 Silver Legend Award winner for Western States. She had 256 tickets to Western States and didn't even need them in the end because she got the Silver Legend Award, which I believe is over 60 you can qualify for. So finally, Stephanie's running Western States, but I got closer to her as a friend. And in our first conversation, I said something about what if I volunteered for Wild Woman? And she was like, well, actually, Betsy, the other co-founder, is ready to move on and focus more on triathlon. So would you be interested in talking about joining the actual business? So fast forward a few months, and myself and our other co-director, Susan Elliott, signed on, bought the business, did all the paperwork. So now I became the co-owner of what was the first ever all-women's 50K or marathon, road or trail in the United States. And now we're looking to grow it. So it's been a healthy, smaller running event for 15 years now. It sells out. You get women who sign up the day that registration opens. It has sort of like that cult following because it's more than just a race. There's the weekend of camping. You're out at the base of Mount Adams with wonderful people for 3 days. So it just kind of has this like loyalty long term. And now we're ready to step it up a bit and add some more events throughout the year and bring in some more brand activations on site in a really authentic way and having more meetups, working with Trail Sisters. So yeah, we're in the beginning of a new chapter for Wild Woman, and I'm happy to be a part of the three of us who are running it.
What is it like co-directing with three people at the table?
Well, the good news is we all bring different strengths. So, I mean, I would love to hear if Steph and Susan agree with me, but I see Steph as such a visionary. I mean, she brings like the heart and soul, the spirit of the wild woman, as we call it. She brings that to this organization. And Susan, I think, is so great at like data and putting out the surveys to our runners and thinking long-term on how we're going to work with other partners. And then I'm just like, I want to make videos about this and get the word out and show up in person and drag people in. So between the three of us, I think we have all of our bases covered for, vision and mission and partnerships and outreach. The hard part is, on the business end, that's three people that you have to work with, get on board. That's people splitting profit three ways. You need three people to agree on things. You need to work with each other's schedules. Like Susan is a mom of an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old, and Steph has grown children. And if I have a kid in the next couple of years, it just makes it really hard to like coordinate and get on the same schedules and make time for us to, have some fun on the trails together too, instead of it just being like trail is work. We still want trail is fun and that we can go for a run together. So I would say just the usual adulting challenges as well as financially. Like if we want this to be a stable part of each of our three incomes for long term, we're going to have to scale. And there's only so much that you can scale when it comes to, hosting a race in a town that has a population of 800 people.
Can you talk through the mechanics around like the economics of running a race? Like what are the pieces that you were surprised by? What are the pieces that people likely aren't familiar with? I know when people hear about like the costs related to road marathons, they're surprised with like the costs related to police and barriers and barricades and fencing and these things that like are not the exciting part of races, but like the essentials that you can't operate if you can't close the streets or if you can't, set up shop at this aid station or whatnot.
Yeah, honestly, road sounds like a terrible beast to plan an event around. So I'm grateful for the trails. The nice thing is Trout Lake, Washington, is this little town like Gateway to Mount Adams, it's called. And so there's really nobody's going through it unless they're going to the mountain, to the trails. And so around the solstice, that weekend, when we have our trail weekend, you're really only going to get people going up there because of the race or because they're going to like ski or climb Mount Adams. So, and since it's almost entirely on trail, I mean, you cross the road. We have one crossing guard right by the start and finish line. We don't really have a ton of logistical nightmares to deal with as far as the route. Definitely, there are some unexpected surprises. Like if the government makes a lot of cuts to the Forest Service, then you might not have any clear trails and you have to go do it all yourself. You have to lean on local nonprofit partners to donate their time in clearing trails. There's also just the fact that it's like so homegrown. It can be hard to communicate to brands like, no, this is a really great event for you to connect with your ideal customers with. They see, tiny little town. I was speaking with one brand once who they were really interested in the race, but they were like, well, we love supporting small running events, but to them small meant like 5,000 people running and we have like 500. So I think it can be hard to communicate the value that you're bringing when it is such a grassroots experience and it doesn't have as much flash and glamour as some bigger races can. And like, that's all good for them. But for us, it's like, how do we balance that really like you're camping in the woods with a bunch of women? Like we still have a potluck on Friday night. It has a different feel than signing up for one of the bigger trail marathons. And that's good and bad. Pros and cons.
We did some work together last year around sponsorship, doing the same thing again this year to try and help connect some brands to the race. One of the brands that we were able to connect with you guys last year was Arc'teryx. And Arc'teryx came in and they were interested because of, why were they interested? What was the, like, talk me through that, like, go deeper on the community component of it. And It feels like that's what they really gravitated towards, the real connection that these women have to the race and the continuity of messaging throughout the year and events that you're doing throughout the year in Portland and potentially Seattle as well. And really just like, I'm curious more about that model versus like, hey, title sponsor, nothing else happens the rest of the year. Talk me through that.
Yeah, maybe part of it is I'm a control freak and I want to maintain authority on every. No, I think what makes like Arc'teryx, for example, I think they were really stoked to support us because it can be so difficult to connect with women, get women to your business because they just want to be there. I think that, if you have a booth at a conference, people are forced to walk by it, but they don't necessarily have like that choice of like, I am going to go across the city to the store and see what it's about. And I think it's just more authentic when you're getting people when they're already really excited instead of like forcing them to walk by something. So Arc'teryx also in particular was moving store locations at that time. So it was kind of like a right time situation for them to partner with us because they could get bodies into their new store and they could give people a reason to come out and see what they're up to in Portland, which is about an hour away. But a lot of our runners also live in Portland. I think they also were just really interested in more of the trail running space because certain brands are perceived or market themselves as like strict outdoor brands or like adventure brands, like hardcore. I'm going to go climb Mount Adams. I'm going to circumnavigate Mount Hood, whatever it is. But a lot of our women, they're moms, they're nurses, they have tech jobs. They don't have a lot of time to go out and like, do these epic pushes that all of the catalogs are going to take pictures of. They're instead trying to balance parenthood and cooking dinner for their school-age kids and still getting out on a run and still seeing their friends. And so I think brands will look at a race like ours, who is really catering to that type of, we have competitive runners for sure, but most of our runners are there to have a good time rather than to compete and to win. And that's a market that I think not every brand is really connecting with. Like, I mean, you've probably seen a lot of advertisements make it look like, oh, I'm going to go climb Mount Everest. I'm going to go really hardcore. And I don't see as many brands showing that like messier side of life where it's like, I'm going to squeeze in a 20-minute run because that's all I have time for during my busy day.
Well, it's fascinating, right? Because there's so much talk about the front of the pack, and the front of the pack helps to move like super shoes and the fast trainers and things like that. And I don't remember what the statistic is, but like the Brooks Glycerin or like some like road shoe that's just like an average trainer is like the best selling shoe of any of the shoes. And it's not like I need to like actually fact check what specific shoe it is. But the point is, it's not a fast super shoe. It's like a daily trainer that you can run easy or slow in. And so the majority of like a shoe brand that sells $1 billion worth of shoes a year, like a majority of that is coming from people who are running slower than, a 4-hour marathon. It's not coming from the front of the pack. And so it's fascinating to see the growth of events that are catering to the majority versus like the UTMB-ification of trail running, where it's like a pipeline to a championship race, where you have to spend a lot to get to the race that enables you to get to the more expensive race that's in Europe.
Pyramid scheme.
Yeah, it's cool to see like so many of these more like, I don't want to describe it as like a small town event, but like it's meant for people who are, as you've described, like busy people who aren't trying to win. They're just trying to get out and enjoy themselves. And so I'm curious on your perspective around like, what is it like to be responsible for building a place where people are dedicating so much of their precious time? Talk to us about the responsibility you have to facilitate that type of environment where it's not about who's going to win, but it's about let's make this as great of a time as possible and really empower people to train and show up.
Oh man, should I write a book? No. Well, so for context, I spent last weekend in Portland actually at a running coaches conference, even though I am not a coach. And I think the responsibility, to answer your question, that I'm feeling is about getting the science and like what actually keeps women healthy in front of women. So much of this running coaches conference, it was put on by Wildwood Clinic. It was about like, we have all these answers on nutrition, menstrual health, bone health. We know the science of how to keep women healthy, but it's not necessarily like getting to those women. And so when we're making choices about like our sponsors through our race, the programming, the speakers that we're going to have at our race, at our weekend, like I want to make sure that they are scientifically accurate and that they're not spreading like toxic messaging around like, oh, you're only going out for 2 hours. You don't need any calories. Like we had our kickoff panel last year at Wild Woman this past June. We had Rachel Entrikin and Sarah Oliben and myself just sitting out on these like beautiful outdoor porches and just having like a chat about what it means to be a woman in trail running. And you know what the main themes were? Like carbs, you need to eat more. Women, like everybody in front of us, you're probably not fueling enough. And like once you start eating more, eating enough, you are going to run better and you're going to have more longevity. But when you're scrolling through Instagram, you don't necessarily see that. You see a lot of people like, oh, here's my casual, like I just ran 7-minute miles for 20 minutes and I'm going to have one smoothie and then like not eat again for 6 hours. So yeah, I think as far as being an all women's race and a really like community oriented experience, one of our duties is to make sure that women are getting the resources that they actually need. And if you like data, John, like I have this on my like digital sticky note on my screen right now, because as I've been like promoting the race and the scholarship that we can talk about through it, I just find the data says it all. It tells us what women need. And so this was through the IRTA and Pro Trail Running Association 2025 report. And what I found was that almost a third of women feel that trail running's intimidating messaging is a barrier. So it goes back to that whole, like, if you're not running Everest, what are you doing? You have 83% of respondents, female trail runners, rated the importance of trail running races feeling inclusive and welcoming for women as a high priority. Like that's over 4 out of 5 women are like, we need more inclusion in women in trail running. 68% of female trail runners would be more likely to participate in races that actively promote female participation. But 45% of female runners see the lack of female-specific facilities as a barrier to trail running. So it's like the data's all there. And I think any race director has the responsibility to read that data and make decisions about your race policies, your course, whatever marketing is going along with that. Like you need to keep that data in mind because we have it.
I had a conversation with a brand, Science and Sport, earlier this week, and maybe we should have a chat with them because they are looking to partner with events in the storytelling, more so than storytelling, the like science communication around how do you actually do the thing? And so it comes down to like when people sign up for a race, they either know what they're doing or they could use guidance. And so there are many people who sign up for a race and they don't have a fueling plan. They are not eating enough in general. And they're like in this opportunity, like they have this opportunity to learn. And so they've just paid you and they're saying, I trust you with my life, literally, because they're signing a waiver that says that. And there's this very unique relationship that then exists where there's like implied trust and credibility to a point where the race organization and the sponsors of the race have the ability to influence what happens next, how you train, how the apparel you wear. Do you do blood work? Like, what are the components of success as it relates to healthy and successful training? And so it's fascinating to hear that brands are wanting to get involved in this education process. How do you think about something like that and weaving brand messaging in, but more so for educational purposes versus like use coupon code Wild Woman and Wild Woman gets 10% of sales? Like, how do you stay authentic while also leveraging other entities and expertise that they can bring to the table?
Whew, I mean, that's $1 million question, and I think it'll keep evolving. And also, like, as for Wild Woman in particular, I mean, we're, again, early on in our kind of expansion era, so we haven't worked with a ton of sponsors in the past, and we'll keep on unpacking what that looks like as we go. I think a big step for whatever projects I'm working on that require a sponsor is really getting to know the company myself if I'm a decision maker. Like, I can't just read the survey results from Wild Women 2025 and be like, oh, everybody likes that type of goo. It must be the right goo. Because, like, I mean, we've seen certain companies like lying. Not giving
right.
people
Not goo,
category.
but yes.
Not goo, yes. Gel, sorry. So part of it is like getting that face-to-face time. I mean, I've done a lot of coffee chats recently. I like took myself out of moratorium for just networking. And now it's been really fun to get to know brands like, oh, Fuel Goods. You connected me with Fuel Goods. And like, that's been really cool to get to meet with their staff and see what values they stand behind, and also get a peek into the way that they're doing business too. Because I think the way that you can kind of tell where a brand's values stand based on the way that they're doing business and the way that they're marketing. I'm such like a language nerd that I will get fed up with certain types of language or messaging on a website and decide like, well, I'm not going to buy from them. So like, why would I try and put that through one of my events or one of my programs? So part of that is just like that personal relationship, using your network. Like having you in my network, John, is really helpful because you can help me vet who are the right values fits. And then, yeah, I don't know, did that answer the question?
Yeah. And then how do you think about women-specific products and brands, right? I was at TRE and somebody shared a photo of the women's bathroom with a brand, and I'm blanking on the brand name, but the woman from the brand had been to another show and there were no tampons in the women's bathroom. And so the brand provided lots of tampons for the women at TRE and said, hey, at the last event, we didn't have any, here you go, kind of a thing. How do you think about like the specific needs for the population that you're serving and goals around partnership on that front as well?
Yeah. Well, there are some existing resources that have been helpful for us in Wild Women in particular. So we did a couple group runs with Trail Sisters in their Portland chapter. And Trail Sisters has a list of criteria in what you need to do in order to be a Trail Sisters approved race. And that was things like having a pregnancy and postpartum deferral policy. It's about having menstrual products on site. And like they literally give you the list of like, here are things that you need to do in order to get that stamp of Trail Sisters approval. So just finding those resources has been our first big step into making sure that we're more inclusive. But also we're surveying our participants. We surveyed our entire audience before the race last year. So whether or not they were planning to run again, we surveyed all the actual runners after the race. And so we're able to gather like what are their needs. And honestly, like I think just because there's 3 of us women who are putting on the race, we intuitively are able to know what we need as far as like menstrual products and stuff like that. So more of our feedback has been around like, I want more events, more experiences that aren't just racing. So like that's why we're trying to do more adventure, or we're calling them wild runs in 2026. We can, do a future, maybe we go to the Alps and have a retreat running around the Alps, because it seems like what we're missing in our business is more opportunities rather than just race weekend. And it's less about like, the products that we're having on site to help women. But yeah, as far as working with brands to make sure that they're serving women's needs, I think honestly, a lot of it is like looking at my own past, my own story, and thinking about what teenage me in high school needed and didn't get. So, and I really thought a lot about this in the past week since I went to that coaching clinic. And everything that these presenters were sharing about around bone stress injuries, around nutrition, around what it's like to be a teenage girl who's running and doesn't get a menstrual cycle. Like none of that was covered when I was in high school. And it would have saved me a lot of pain, a lot of time on the sidelines had I been given like true science. And so when I see brands who are talking about, well, not about how a woman looks, but about how she feels and about how fueling makes you strong and about how skipping your period isn't cool. Those are all green flags to me when I see brands who are like not afraid to talk about those hard topics, but also be accurate in their messaging. And it's kind of like what you were saying around like science communications. Somebody at this conference a few days ago was talking about like, we have all this information, but what teenage girl on a track team wants to hear that information about nutrition coming from their parent or from their teacher? Like, they don't want that. And so the presenter was like, do we have to like team up with celebrities and have them create Instagram reels about running nutrition? And I'm like, yeah, I think that's the answer. And so also seeing like who are these runfluencers or who are these leaders in the industry who are talking about women's health and women's running, what brands are they backing? Because that gives me a clue that they're going to work with brands who are serving women's needs instead of just like for show.
Yeah, and I think someone like Rachel and Trenken, I can't get her name right, but I know she's listening, so I'm sorry, Rachel. Somebody like that is going to be a fantastic resource because she's both outspoken about the need to do it. She has a nutrition partner in Precision who helps her understand the science and helps her do the thing. But she's also like winning races. And she's been winning races for a few years now. And so anyone can, not anyone, but a handful of people can go out and like shine bright and burn hot for a little bit. But it's the longer term growth and the longer term durability that we should be celebrating. And she has that. So the conversation with someone like her is fascinating. I want to give a shout out to, I looked up the name of the brand that gave out the tampons at Thierry. It's Jessie Hyman, the co-founder of Pruzan Running, which is a unique feminine perspective on performance running apparel. So some free love here for pruzanrunning.com. Go check them out because it's something that shouldn't need to be done, but got a lot of press because it hasn't been done.
There was a 50K I did a couple springs ago where two different women running while I was running the race asked me if I had a tampon. And I was like, the aid station must have a tampon, but they didn't. So yeah, I mean, then I was like, should I start carrying tampons? Just like hand out like the tampon fairy while I'm running? But yeah, I think we'll start seeing, I mean, I was just blown away by this past weekend's conference with how much menstrual cycles came up because I don't think 10 years ago people were talking about it that much. Certainly when I was in high school, never thought about a thing about how my period relates to endurance or sports. And so just to see it come up so many times. And like during social hour, I was like going up to all these men and being like, let's talk about periods. And they were so open. So I actually think, if you want a 2026 prediction, I think more brands in the sports space, in the fitness space, they're going to start really leaning into menstrual cycles without any shame. Let's stop hiding them.
And on the productization piece of that, like a handful of brands will quote unquote win because they'll be smart and they'll see what Jessie did at TRE and they'll see what others did at whatever. And whether or not they do it to get like bonus earned media or not, like simply doing it is a good thing and will make it happen more. Meaning like put products in bathrooms at running events that are, primarily men focused, not men focused, but attended by men. And yeah, I think it's a fascinating prediction that like that will be more front and center, particularly as like so many of the race directors that have been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years start to retire. And it's people who are more comfortable talking about things that the older generations might not be as savvy in discussing or talking about. If this episode is sparking something for you, we'd love to hear it. Share your takeaways on LinkedIn and tag Long Run Labs so we can follow along and join in on the discussion. Your reflections help the ideas go further and might be exactly what someone else needs to see in their feed today. One thing, speaking of the next generation, if I recall, you offer free registration for people who are under 18. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about the scholarships and building for runners of the future.
Well, I can't take any credit myself for youth running for free because I'm pretty sure that's been happening since day one with Wild Woman. So again, Steph Irving and Betsy Scott, the two co-founders of Wild Woman, I think that they, It's a small town. Again, running is not one of the big sport focuses of the Columbia River Gorge. And so I think just knowing how much Steph and Betsy cared about running and wanted to see the next generation get into it, that was like such an easy way for them to do it. So we'll usually have a small handful of under 18. I would love to see more U18 relay teams this year. So we have a 50K, a marathon, a half marathon, and a marathon length relay where you can have up to 4 runners. And I just think that would be such a great way for track and field athletes, cross country athletes to start dabbling into trail instead of just track and road. I just, come do a 5-mile leg of a relay. But yeah, backing up, it's a 3-day weekend experience, June 19, 20, 21 of 2026. We're actually moving. Here's one business move we're doing is moving our half marathon race to Sunday so that we can accommodate more runners per day. So that's like kind of one way that we can scale in a way is just spreading out our distances. What is going to be different and the most exciting thing I've ever done for the first time this coming year is we're collaborating with a nonprofit called the Cairn Project, which is also one of my clients. And we are creating my first 50K Sisterhood scholarship program where we are going to be collecting as many applications as we can from women who are ultra curious but have never done an ultra before. They want to, but they might face barriers like not knowing how to train, not even knowing it's possible for them. I mean, that was me. I never would have thought that I could run 100 miles, let alone 50. And so I sat down, I was thinking about all these barriers. And again, what those data points show about why women don't feel like they can become an ultra runner. And we're just going to try and knock each of those barriers down. So we are going to select 15 women from however many apply over the next month. And we are going to be covering their race entry. LOA has already signed on to give them each a pair of trail running shoes. I'm in talks with, check back next week, folks, but I'm in chatting with a handful of different brands who can give product-based donations so that these 15 women can have everything they need to approach their first 50K comfortably and happily. And the cool part about that is, 15 units of products for a lot of brands is a drop in the bucket, but they're going to be getting really beautiful storytelling from these 15 women throughout the entire process. So we're going to get to watch these 15 women train for their first ultra, maybe talk about what it's like to get their periods during their training cycle. We'll get to see them compete for the first time, cross that finish line, and the brands who sign up to be a part of this will get to be a part of that story. And so, I can geek out on storytelling all day, but I just feel like this is going to show the first 50K Sisterhood is going to show that storytelling in running media is just as important as like medals or crossing the finish line or the fact that you're even running that distance, right? I think it's about diversifying what we're seeing in media and like who are the voices that are, creating videos and sharing photos about their running journey. And they're going to be a lot of those people that I was talking about earlier who aren't necessarily going out to win, but they're going out because they want a third space where they're not in the home taking care of their children. They're not at work, but they're out being a wild woman in the trails around Mount Adams. So yeah, I'm really excited.
There's so much to unpack there. I took a few notes and I want to work through the next couple of topics on the relay experience. I had never thought much about having a relay race as an entry point until you mentioned it the way that you described it. And then I thought back to, actually my first 5 trail races were relays through the North Face Endurance Challenge series where people were running, a 10K within a marathon relay. And then Hayden Hawks and Zach Miller were competing for the win in a 50-mile race. And they ran right past me in the same arena, but they were going twice as fast. And I was going a 10K and they were doing a 50K, a 50-miler. But it was a really accessible way for someone like me who lived in Boston and didn't have great trail access at the time to go to California or go to Utah or go to Ontario and just have a great time with great people on trails. And that got me further down the rabbit hole of meeting other trail runners and learning more about trail racing and whoa, you can run 100 miles. That's crazy kind of a thing. And so I think about the fact that you have 15 women and the impact that each of those individuals have on their own community. I think back to the Wazelle Underbird campaign where Wazelle sponsored 6 athletes or 5 athletes around the 2024 Olympic marathon trials. And they gave them all the resources that they needed to make running a priority, and they gave them permission to take a swing and to be serious about it and be very serious. And the ripple effect that that had within their own communities. Like we told that story on For the Long Run over a 5-episode series with them. And it was just fascinating to hear these were not pro athletes. These were women running in the 230s, which is fast, but it's not, they're not getting shoe contracts as a result. But the way that they talked about what was it like to have a brand believe in you, so much so that they're investing dollars and energy and effort and storytelling, like the ripple effect that that has on their family and their friends and their community. Like these are all micro influencers within their own community. None of them had massive Instagram followings. And I think that was the point. And so now you're doing this with 15 women. Have you thought about that ripple effect that gets created?
That's one of the main reasons why we're doing this is we know, so for context, the Cairn Project, which is the nonprofit partner in this scholarship partnership, their entire mission is to close the gender gap by turning your outdoor adventures into a grassroots fundraiser, but equally, if not more importantly, sharing the stories in that adventure process. And so we already know that this model works. We have seen countless women get inspired to spend more time outside because their friend, their neighbor, their colleague put on this adventure fundraiser and shared stories around it. So because, I'm in this really lucky position where I am knee deep in that nonprofit and I'm also co-directing this race, I was like, this is the easiest way to make a huge impact is to, do all we can to reach out to these brands and partners and do all we can to get this application in front of as many people as possible. But we know it's going to work. We know that these 15 women can use the resources that we have through the Cairn Project to figure out what is their unique running story, because they're all going to have different ones. And how are they going to share it? Do they want to create a blog? Do they want to share photos or videos on social media? Do they want to do an in-person event? We've had a lot of women who volunteer through the Cairn Project put on events at their local climbing gym or storytelling nights. And so I just want these 15 women to feel really empowered to figure out how they like to share their voice, as well as what is the story inside of them that they know they need to share, but it's really scary. Because sharing your truth is scary, asking for money is scary, and this is meant to break down barriers to ultra running, but it's also meant to break down barriers to using your own voice.
I love it. I want to have you on this podcast to talk through the founder's story or the owner's story of this race. And one of the things that is important to me is that ripple effect. I love creating opportunities or elevating opportunities where that ripple effect exists. And so I knew that this was a big part of Wild Woman and what you're doing with the race, and wanted to demonstrate or help you demonstrate why you're doing it, what you're doing it, what the impact can have. So I'm going to be very blunt and make this a call to action for anyone that's listening that is at a brand that would be interested in supporting, reach out to me, reach out to Angie. Let's find a way to make this even more impactful. Like I said, I've been working with Angie for 4 years now and know the strong quality work that she does. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, I don't often do a hour-long pitch on something like this, but I feel like something like this is really important to create that snowball effect, create that ripple effect of how do we one life is an entire world to that person. And so how do we create more opportunities for that one person to impact one more person and impact one more person? And to quote Dylan Bowman, this is how trail running will save the world, where you find these opportunities where people are doing it for the right reason. And there's a real material impact from going out and running a 50K, which when people say well, running is selfish, I always push back for the reasons we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, please do reach out. Thanks, John. And second of all, I just think it's it is proven in the work that both the Cairn Project does and what Wild Woman does. We have heard countless stories of women who have had their lives changed because they either signed up for a race or because they took in media about a woman doing something that they didn't know was possible for them, and it inspired them to try. I actually host the Cairn Project's podcast. It's called See Her Outside, Stories from Women Who Adventure. And so many women who have shared their really personal, vulnerable stories on that show have inspired other women to speak up about their needs as well, or to try something new. Like Carly Graham is a rock climber, and I didn't know we were going to talk about this when we recorded, but she shared her experience of sexual assault as she was learning rock climbing from a man. And while we were recording, I could like hear the shift in her voice, and I was like, ooh, it's about to get deep. And like, it was really brave of her to speak up about something so personal. And, you know, it's hard. It's hard to listen to. But then we get messages from people who are like, I'm so glad she spoke up because it makes me feel less alone. Or even things that are a little bit less heavy, like Rachel Fagiano was training to climb Aconcagua in Argentina, but she lived in New York City. So she had to just like fill up her backpack with rocks and go up and down her staircase a million times and go through the city streets of New York City. But it shows to those people living in cities that like you can go climb one of the 7 summits even if you're training at home. So I just like, I mean, I can't talk enough clearly about how much storytelling matters and how much every single person has their own unique story that needs to be shared in the media. Because if we just keep getting these same stories of like, look, I got a sponsor and then I got a gold medal, or like, look, I built a business and it was an overnight success, like that's not relatable. But like these women who are going to get this first 50K Sisterhood scholarship, like those are the relatable stories that are going to have that ripple effect that you're talking about, the future of trail running.
How do you create a scholarship? What was the process for someone who's listening is like, wow, this sounds awesome. I've been wanting to do something similar. Like, what's the blueprint?
I'm lucky that I have a great model in the Summit Scholarship Foundation. So I keep talking about the Cairn Project. That's actually part of the same 501c3 as the Summit Scholarship Foundation. Together, we create the Alliance for Gender Equity and Outdoor Adventure. This is obviously a main focus of my work. And the Summit Scholarship Foundation has been going on for, over 5 years now, 6 years. And Sunny Strower, endurance athlete, executive director of the GIA Alliance, she put together the Summit Scholarship Foundation to eliminate barriers for women in mountain sports, and thinking like hardcore mountaineering, some like really epic trips that they give out scholarships for. So thankfully, now that we're the same nonprofit, I can use that as a model. And so literally just this morning, I was examining their application and how it will differ from ours. I was looking at the criteria for the panel selecting if we get like 1,000 people applying, I think it's possible. I'm going to need a lot of volunteers to review applications, but you also want to make sure that you're like removing bias in the best ways. And so having a criteria to help people rate applications. There's also just kind of like the waiver, like more legal end of like, what are you agreeing to do? What, transportation to the race is not provided. Like, do you acknowledge that? So there's kind of like the fun pieces and then the boring legal pieces, but I'm trying to just identify every single potential gap that we have through the process and making sure it's filled so that I can minimize the amount of sticky moments that pop up or questions to answer, and instead make it really clear, like, this is how you write a stellar application. It's probably not going to be copying and pasting what you put in a ChatGPT. You're probably going to have to put a little bit of effort into it, and that'll give you an automatic leg up. I'll tell you, I've reviewed applications for several women in the outdoors nonprofits, and if you put a little bit of effort and creativity in, you're like automatically going towards the top of that list.
Is everyone submitting ChatGPT created responses these days?
Like, there's obviously some clues when you can tell, just like in any profession right now is probably facing that too. But I think whether it's ChatGPT or not, I think a lot of people still don't understand the importance of sharing a story and sharing it vulnerably. Like, if the application question says like, why do you believe gender equity is important in trail running? If you just like say like, because all women should have the opportunity, and like that just doesn't really tell me anything. But if you tell me like about your childhood and what your beliefs around your body were, like that's going to resonate with me a lot more because you're putting emotion into it. So that's why we're creating a blog post that gives people tips like that on how to write a strong application. Also, I hope that everybody who applies for this and doesn't get it, like they're still welcome to come either sign up for the ultra on your own time, sign up for the half, sign up for the relay. Like, we want to make this a celebration of women, not just a scholarship that you get or don't get.
Do you have an ideal persona that you're looking for? Is it going to be more about who applies? Yeah,
it's hard. And again, first time doing this specific scholarship, but from what I've seen from the Summit Scholarship Foundation, like you get a whole diverse range. I mean, I think that there was a scholarship winner in her 70s. I forget for which trip, but we also have a Summit Scholarship that are for youth, teenage women on Mount Baker, climbing Mount Baker. So I'm hoping that we get teenagers through people in their 70s, 80s, 90s. I don't know. Get us a 100-year-old woman applying. And yeah, all types of income levels, all types of jobs, all types of reasons for wanting to get into running. So yeah, I mean, I'm already dying with curiosity to read some of these applications. We're not accepting them until December 27th to January 10th, but I know that I'm going to be like constantly checking like, oh my gosh, who's applying? Because I think they'll all be so different.
You've talked a lot about storytelling. What is storytelling to you and why is it important? And then I have a couple of follow-up questions off of that.
Well, I have gotten really obsessed with radical honesty, is what I'm calling it, over the past year. And then I realized that like radical honesty and storytelling are sort of the same thing. Like for me, true storytelling is talking about why something changed you. It's not just what happened, right? Like an anecdote is what happened, whereas a story is sharing how what happened changed you. And so if you're getting really honest about these like pivotal moments in your life, those transformative moments, whether they're big or small, those are stories, and those are what our people are going to connect to, because transformation has emotion built in. It has like a before and after built in. It doesn't have to be like a hero's journey style story. I think sometimes people will get sucked into like, it must fit this exact model. But like across the world, there are tons of different models of what a story is or isn't. I just think what a lot of people miss when it comes to storytelling is like, you're not just telling us the facts. You're telling us about the transformation and why that transformation mattered. And again, that's why like people who share stories in their applications are going to shoot up to the top, because they stand out and they come out really unique. You know, brand storytelling is similar, where it's like, you know, how does this product change lives? It's not just about the specs of a watch. It's not about like the stack of a shoe, but like, how is a shoe, how is this watch adding to the emotion of somebody's running experience?
That was going to be the follow-up piece. Like, how do you advise brands and athletes or creators in the storytelling process? Right? Like it used to be, or maybe not used to be, but there are so many options these days and there's so much noise. And so how do we cut through that clutter?
I think you're a great model for this, John. I know you're not fishing for compliments, but you know, things just stick out in my memory when they're a good story. Like I remember years ago, you got your sweat tested. And because I got to like watch that unfold and get to like see the events and how you were making changes based on being a salty sweater. See, I remember that. It's like, those are what really sticks. And so I think that one of my like predictions for 2026 that I tongue-in-cheek put out this morning on my Substack was about how we're going to see even more of that, like pull back the curtain and see behind the scenes. I think we've been seeing more and more of that as people get exhausted from this like, you know, picture perfect life that we know doesn't really exist. But I think we're going to see more of that from brands and small businesses, and like, you know, getting a peek into what is it like to be an employee at this business? What does it look like to be a new user of this product versus one who's been using it for 5 years? And just, yeah, I think that brands are going to be catching on to how do we show this like story of a product and story of a user in a really not pretty way. Like I think people want a little bit messier insights, and they want to be taken along like for the journey and like not knowing what's going to happen next, what next episode. Nobody wants like that cookie cutter feel, I don't think, anymore.
And what's the guidance for an athlete in the space?
Well, so like for the Cairn Project, when we have people who sign up because they decide like, I want to make my next hike a fundraiser for gender equity in the outdoors, I have like packets for them around like mining their life for stories and about finding like what message really matters to them most. So like this is not a one and done. I wish I could give you like, here's like the 2 quick tips to help you figure out your life story or to communicate it. But it's really like an iterative process, and it takes a lot of self-reflection too. So that's a big piece of our program at the Cairn Project, is figuring out like what was a moment in your life that really shifted things for you, and why is it important for other people to know that? And that's kind of my job there, is like helping women who need that extra brainstorming, like take that out of their brain and put it into a blog post, put it into a fundraising page, stuff like that.
Did you ever imagine that this was the work that you were going to be doing even 10 years ago?
What was I doing 10 years ago? I shudder to think I was probably still working at TGI Fridays. No, I was a little older at that point. In some ways, yeah. In some ways, no. I think that I had a lot of limiting beliefs of myself and what it meant to be a woman working in the world, because like my mom did not have a good childhood growing up, and she did not have a lot of good role models. My mom dropped out of school in 6th grade and just like had a lot of adversity. And so to see her being so grateful for a stable life and like a happy marriage with my dad for 30 something years, I think I saw that and thought like, oh, well, I guess that's a dream life, is like you're healthy, you have somewhere to live. If you're lucky, you have a family. And as grateful as I am for my parents, I also think that like maybe that security, and I think I had a low bar for myself. I don't think I dreamed big enough. And ultras definitely helped me dream bigger. I mean, literally the few months after I ran my first 50K, I got a divorce. I moved. I quit my job. I ended up, in that next year, I like wrote a book. I started a podcast. Like so much happened after I really started listening to my body, and I owe ultra running for that. So in some ways, no, I never would have thought that I could have all this autonomy and creativity in my work that I get paid to do, and also sometimes underpaid to do based on the project. But I also think that deep down inside, when I think about like 9-year-old Angie standing, watching the Boston Marathon happen, like run by her house, like she'd be like, yeah, this makes sense. This is what you were supposed to do the whole time.
Talk to us about the fact that you work for yourself, right? It's a non-traditional path that I have now taken as well. And somebody pointed out to me, like, the way that I made it possible was building this thing on the side for a number of years where when I jumped, there was a parachute and I wasn't jumping out of a plane with no plan of like, how the hell am I going to, safely have a next step. But there was I had been doing something well enough for the previous 3 years that I was like, well, if I put more effort behind this, this will pay my bills and enable the lifestyle that I want to live. What did that process look like for you? And how did it change over time?
Yeah, I think that every single person's entrepreneurship story is going to look different. Like I did not have a safety net in the same way you did, and I hadn't been practicing a very successful side thing for as long. I had dabbled in my side hustles, I guess, as they call it. But that was bringing in, like $10,000 a year max when I was making $30,000 a year working for a nonprofit job. And that was my full-time job. So in those days, like in my mid-20s, I was making max $40,000 a year. And I really thought the goal in life, that one study, there was a study, it's antiquated at this point, but it was like, if you make $70,000 a year, that's where happiness peaks out. So like if you make more than that, do you remember that? You know what I'm talking about?
No, but no. Okay, sure.
Well, yeah, you're like, not in Boulder, it doesn't, but
it does not in Boulder.
I think in college, I read some study and they were like, yeah, you max out on happiness at like 70,000. So I thought,
I've heard something similar, but whatever the number is. Yeah.
I'm sure it's not anymore. Inflation, man. But I was like, oh, okay, like, so if I make $70,000, like, it'd be cool. Maybe I'll own a house someday. Again, like low standards for myself, not anymore. So I kind of just I was in there too long in that space. And again, once like kind of that whole eruption of my life happened, not just because I ran a 50K, but during that era, that's when I realized if I stay in this nonprofit work, I will never have a retirement account. I loved the work, but it's just I wasn't going to be able to travel in the ways I wanted to. I wouldn't be able to sign up for all the races I wanted to. And so when I kind of hit this moment of change, I was like, I've done this side thing for a couple years and I know at least I can make something off of that. So what would happen if I just ripped off the Band-Aid? In that first year of self-employment, I was able to replace my smaller income. That felt good to know okay, at least I can do it. The next year I doubled that. The next year, I didn't quite double it again, but I got way closer to $100,000 income pre-tax than I ever would have thought that quickly. So, it's a constant iteration. I think entrepreneurship is the biggest catalyst for growth in the rest of your life. Like what you do in your business is going to reflect on every other aspect of your life, your relationships, your health, the way you stand on a stage, the way you walk in a room. It all goes back to the way that you're running your business. So I kind of freaking love that. I love that daily challenge of what is the future I'm shaping for myself because I'm self-employed. And also I have all the same self-employed struggles. Health insurance is the saddest thing ever. And taxes just get worse and worse when you get married. It's all confusing. And I still am trying to figure out the best way to put money towards retirement because of my self-employed pension. But then I have 5,000 sitting around for my old 401k. And it's all very overwhelming. And sometimes that means doing the pieces you hate doing. I'm not a finance person, but I got to learn. And I just got to trust that will help me in the rest of my life too. So ask me again 2 years from now when we do another episode. I bet I'll be in a totally different, healthier space, I hope. But so far, it just gets better and better.
Love it. Hopefully, the huddle grows and expands. We kind of semi-publicly launched, I don't know, this month with paid membership community that is seeking to address solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, operators who are in the $100K to $1 million range. And we have a couple people signing up. We're going live in Boulder in February and hoping to scale to other cities after that. And the idea is exactly what you outlined, right? there are some things you know that you don't know, and then there's a lot of things that you don't know that you don't know. And there are a lot of people who are out there figuring it out on their own and have struggled through things before and figured it out and like have knowledge to share. So I've found a lot of value in these peer groups where people can learn from each other. I've seen the power of like Slack communities. Like I saw you're in Second Nature now, which is wonderful to see. And like I've seen what happens when you put a bunch of really smart people in a room together. And so we're seeking to make some curation around what happens when a bunch of smart people go in a room together. So hopefully you can find something like that around you, or a digital community. Or I think Portland is high on the list. San Francisco is on the list. Austin, Texas is on the list. New York and Boston probably as well. But maybe it's a spinoff of Emily's Founded Outdoors, and there's a version for individual operators as well. I don't know.
Yeah, because we really need, I think what you're doing with the huddle is so important because, again, it goes back to sharing stories. And like the most that I've learned from Second Nature, from Founded Outdoors, from anyone sharing their entrepreneurship journey on the internet, like those stories are so clarifying for me. It can help me be like, oh, I didn't make a mistake. I'm just learning. It can help me be like, oh, there's a really fun marketing idea I never would have thought of myself. It can give examples of, like, you've been really great, John, at giving examples of healthy partnerships with brands. And like hearing these stories from other people and other creators is so helpful for me. And so I'm trying to like build in reciprocity. Like on my Substack, I have shared like very detailed accounts of my journey. And like, I just really want to keep leaning into that radical honesty in my storytelling, because I do believe that the more I share my stories that can hopefully help other like aspiring entrepreneurs or aspiring ultra runners, the more I'm just going to like find that information of like whatever my next version of Angie is. So yeah, I think what you're doing is awesome. And I hope that a lot of people take you up on it, because if I were in Boulder, I'd be there in a heartbeat.
Sweet. Well, I know you've been to Boulder once. You'll have to come back here again soon. And yeah, shout out to Emily, your business partner with Wild Poppy, for connecting us, 4 years ago. I know Emily's going to be listening to this podcast for both professional and personal reasons. So hello, Emily, and thanks for keeping the boat afloat.
Yes, we love Emily.
Awesome. Angie, this has been a blast. We will see you out there.
See you out there.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Long Run Labs. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building something of their own. We'll be back next Tuesday with more stories at the intersection of endurance and entrepreneurship, from the people shaping the outdoor industry in ways big and small. Until then, keep showing up, keep asking questions, and we'll see you out there. This show is produced by Dylan Delaney of Delaney Video LLC, with musical composition by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound, and managed overall by Emily Holland of Wild Poppy Creative.